In the last video about my boat Pipedream, I assembled the mast and got it all back up and got her ready to go to sea. A fair amount of time has passed since that last video, and so in this video I'm going to detail how I got her back in the water twice and finally got her out to sea to give her a good test. So this is another video in the long-running saga of how I turned this into a boat. I bought the tube from a second-hand tube supplier and got it delivered to a barn on the top of a hill, and people started calling me Noah. Did it make sense? Was it a logical thing to do? I don't know. But here I am several years later, and the boat's looking really good, and it's getting close to the point where I can do that trip I've always wanted to do. Now, in the standard YouTube mantra, please like, comment, share, subscribe if you like this video. So you might be wondering, just what did I do to the mast? Well, the mast had been up for 20 years, over 20 years, and the rigging that I bought was all second-hand at the time, or most of it was second-hand, so it was well over 30 years old at this point. The mast had always worked well, but it always needed a little bit more power. The sails weren't quite big enough. They were okay, but she was lacking that bit of power. So the whole point of this job was to basically add in, or service the mast, but add in about 2.8 meters to extend the mast up and get around about 50% more sail area. Now, of course, the boat lives in France, and this was too much work to do during my holidays. So my whole plan was to take the parts back to the UK and do as much in the UK as I possibly could. And then eventually take it all back to France again, and then actually build it up and stick it all back up again. To do this, I had to buy a TIG welder because I would be doing a lot of aluminium welding. I had to learn how to TIG weld because I'd never done it before, and fabricate all the bits, stick them on top of my trusty Volvo during COVID times, and then take them all back and get the mast up. I also had to overcome my incredibly strong fear of heights, which is something I've always struggled with, despite having built roofs and various stuff like that. So a job like I was doing at this point was really quite stressful for me. But eventually it was all done, and it come time to go and test it. Putting a boat back in the water is always a stressful thing, but it's particularly stressful when you've got a truck right on the side of the slipway and you're only about sort of 6 inches away from crashing into it. The setup where I keep the boat is actually really quite cool. You've got this really cool concrete slipway and a trailer that really adapts to the bottom of the boat and lifts pipey just on the central hull, and it really works quite well. It's a 15-ton trailer pulled by a tractor, as you can see here. Alright, so I got the boat back in the water again. I was all ready to test everything, ready to head out to sea and enjoy the time. Well, I enjoyed the time anyway. But unfortunately, with all the drought that's been going on, the Verlaine water quality got to such a level, a poor quality level, that they shut the lock, except for people who are going out for 3 weeks or more. And there was a risk I'd get stuck on the wrong side of the lock, which would be a real nightmare, because obviously I need to get her out of the water again, up on the side in a spot. And if I was stuck on the wrong side of the lock, where do I moor, where do I put her, how much do I have to pay on top? So it wasn't terribly great. So anyhow, I got stuck on the Verlaine, which is not a bad place to be stuck. It's beautiful, fresh water, lots of swimming. I managed to sail her up and down the river and do a fair bit of testing, which has been quite good. She's been sailing fairly well. I mean, I managed to tack up and down the river single-handed. She gets stuck in irons. That's where the boat sort of, you go to tack and you get almost round the tack, and then you sort of like start drifting back and can't complete the tack to come back and go the other way with the wind pushing you. So essentially, you're coming like this, the wind's pushing you, and then you want to tack like this and go like this. And she would get to around about this point, sometimes about this point, and then start drifting and sometimes drift back. That was partially because the first time I was towing 2 dinghies, and you can't expect a boat to tack properly, which is towing 2 blooming great big dinghies with both with outboard motors on as well, so propellers. It was also because for some reason I was tacking entirely wrong. I have no idea what was wrong with me. I was letting go of the foresail straight away and stalling the rudder and not pulling the main in enough. Don't know why that happened. No, I just wasn't there. But the second time I managed to tack a number of times, and today I took her out and got a little bit more video, and I managed to tack most of the time without the assistance of the engine. I keep the engine on because on the river, she's 12 meters long. The river's in places only around about 80 meters, 100 meters, 120 meters, in that sort of region. So obviously you're going along like this from one river bank to the other bank. It's not very long before you need to turn, and if you faff it up, it's a river bank. You don't really want to hit it. I've hit the bank before, many years ago. But generally, yeah, she was sailing quite nice. I think I'm going to go for 15 minutes and she comes out the water. I was going to go for a last swim, but oh well. Yeah, I think I'll forget that today and just go and take her down there now and get her out the water. And she won't be back in the water for probably about a year, which is a bit of a nightmare. But what can you do? You know, it's one of those things. I only have so much holiday, I only have so much money. It's always the war against the time and the money. Sometimes you have one, sometimes you have the other, never both at the same time. So that's about it for this trip. I've got a little list of stuff to do in October. I've got to think about and get ready for. And that should be good. So with 15 minutes to go, I had to race back to the marina, and I got there in time, got her on the trailer, and we got her out and got her all nice and secure again. Then my winter campaign of jobs began, and I went through those various things on my list that I'd realised still needed doing, such as fixing sails and doing some of the interior work as well, and just making it cleaner. Well, welcome to another video. So in this video, I finally get to sea. I'm out there now. I'm looking around, and I don't know what wind we got now, but we're probably at around about 3 or 4 miles an hour of wind. And we got 1.5 miles an hour of boat speed at slack tide, so you can't tell much from the new performance of all this new rig in these conditions. But at least I'm out at sea. Anyway, so I got here a couple of weeks ago now, and the first thing I had to try and do was get her in the water and finish all the jobs I'd not managed to finish, on the last trip back in end of May. So the big problem one of the big problems I had to fix was the trailer. So the marina has gone and changed its old trailer. This is a cool trailer. It's all hydraulic. It's it can go up and down. It's all in the independent sort of hydraulics on it, so you can really match it to the boat. The old trailer fitted it perfectly. I actually made the front of the boat. When I put my V-piece in, I actually measured the trailer and made sure that would fit the trailer perfectly. But he's gone and changed the trailer, which is understandable. It's a nice new trailer, but I'm the only boat that won't fit on it, which is a bit of a problem for me because I'm like 200 foot from the water, so how do I get it back to water? And the answer is I had to make big wood blocks to modify the trailer to let the trailer fit pipey. So it's not very sunny here today. In fact, it's peeing down with rain. So anyhow, what I've done is I've made these so they'll fit the hull. I've chopped them with a saw. I drew the curve of the hull, which I know because it's a circle, and I've cut grooves down into them, roughly around about in the right places. And then I'm using my trusty, this is one of my favourite tools for woodwork, my angle grinder. Favourite tool for everything really, isn't it? With a sanding pad. So what I've done is I just use an old grinding disc as the backing pad. I did have, in fact I still have somewhere, the proper attachment disc that goes on there, backing pad. It's a black plastic backing pad, but I don't use them.
I don't use them because the only thing that I've ever really seriously had fail on me in all these years, and thousands of discs and thousands of cutting discs and thousands of grinding discs, is the black backing pad. It failed on me twice, and they shatter. Sometimes you catch them, and yeah, it nearly went in my leg and all kinds of things. It made a right mess. But I found that using a grinding disc is a really good idea, because these grinding discs obviously are nice big thick ones. They're half used. They don't get hot because all the heat's out here, so you've got no risk of this shattering, getting overhit hot, you know, or anything like that. Anyhow, so what I do is, now I've got it like this, I literally just tear through it with this and get it nice and flat like that one there. That took quite a bit of work. Not too much work to do. But then when we put her on the trailer and we were moving her out to the water, she slipped about 3 times. So she wasn't quite balanced, because what I realised is that V-piece on the front of the trailer, the old one was quite sharp and fitted Pipey perfectly, because I made the V-piece on Pipey to fit the V-piece on the trailer. The new one's quite wide, so the boat can rock from side to side, which then means the boat can slip from side to side too. So when she slipped, she actually sort of dropped on one side like this and went quite hard. You know, she slipped 2 or 3 inches down. It was quite serious. So she sort of flicked down like this. And seeing, you know, nearly 10-tonne boat go like this when you're pretty much close next to it is a bit of a shock. But she got in the water okay, but I have to make some further adjustments to make sure I can get her out the water again, because obviously I've got to get back home and carry on paying mortgages and stuff.
Of course, one obstacle I have to get through to get out to sea is to actually take her through Azar Lock. And this is always an interesting sort of part of the trip, because on the one hand it can be a little bit scary. On the other hand, Pipey has hugely fantastic manoeuvrability. She has 2 engines, so I can put one in reverse and one in forward, and she actually turn in her own length on the spot. You know, just pirouette. It's really quite cool. And also, if I'm coming away from a lock side like this, again, I can put one engine in forward and one engine in reverse, and literally just the bow will just gently move away from the side as if she's got a bow thruster. You know, it really makes taking her in and out of locks almost a pleasure, despite the fact that I've got very pointy, sharp ends, and all these boats around me are glass fibre, and would not last long in a sort of in a collision circumstance. I have had someone once run into her, which was not very good, and luckily it was his fault, but basically he took a big chunk out the bow of his boat and then sort of proceeded to get angry at me, even though I hadn't been moving. I'd actually been tied up at the time. So yeah, you have to worry a little bit in these locks, and some people don't seem to understand that she stops quite quick and their boats stop quite quick, but ultimately boats, you know, it's not like you got brakes. It's not like you stop on a sixpence.
This is Ile Dumet with all the lobster pots and foul ground over there. I've got to go around to get to the island. I better make sure I don't go inside these boys really.
Just going to interject a little bit of learning I've had in 2024 while using electronic charts. I was coming up to Ile Dumet this year, and I thought, where's all the buoys gone? There's a ton of danger areas, there's cardinal buoys, and they weren't showing on the chart. But if I scrolled in, briefly they would flick up. So I talked to CNAV, which is the company I use for my chart system on my iPad, and they said you've got to turn off the scamming feature, because that basically takes away the buoys when you're scrolling, so the chart doesn't get too cluttered. I was watching a Pali revival video, and they were talking about a couple who had lost their boat because they'd hit a reef. They'd been following an avionics chart and it hadn't shown anything. I suspect it was perhaps because of the scamming feature or something like that. You scroll in and suddenly the reef appears. So it's just a thing to watch if you're using electronic charts. And preferably keep a paper chart, because you can scroll in on a paper chart as much as you want and nothing's going to disappear.
I thought some other people were popping around here, but they're not following me, so there seems to be a few boats anchored there tonight. It's not the most sheltered of places, but it would be nice to get in and drop anchor for the night and sit on the island, but we'll see. If it's bad, I'm just going to head straight out to sea and just spend the night at sea. Should be nice too.
After presenting a negative about electronic charts, as in the problem with scamming features, here's a real positive about electronic charts. After the trip, I could look at my route that I took to Ile Dumet and look at the track that the electronic chart recorded. And I can quite easily, quite quickly, actually get the true average course made good during that time. So this was light airs, and you can see that I was getting around about 52.5 degrees to the wind, or 52 to 55 degrees to the wind over that entire trip. Now this isn't too bad really. It's not a great figure to be tacking for around about 105 degrees, but considering my ability at sailing, as in I've only ever sailed one other boat, and that was the little tinker dinghy I have, considering the fact that I've got second-hand sails, and considering the fact that I'm not really paying a huge amount of attention and my stern drives are down, 105 degrees is actually quite good. She would actually tack higher up, further closer to the wind. This seemed to be the sweet spot for her at this time. Now, of course, if it was stronger winds, then, you can probably get that way better to about 90 degrees. But in light airs, I feel like this is a reasonable amount of performance given the boat's shape, hull form, and also my abilities.
If at this point you're thinking, why not just buy those sails? Why not just fix that gear cable? Unfortunately, I got a big mortgage and a small income. If you'd like to help out though, here's a QR code from PayPal that you can use in the PayPal app, or if you haven't got the app, here's the standard sort of thing that you can use on PayPal to help me out that little bit. Just as a guide, just £1.20 will buy 5 Sainsbury's jam donuts and help this poor little stomach just stop it from whittling away to nothing. So this is Ile Dumet at sunset in the anchorage of the Grand Port. It doesn't look very much like a Grand Port to me here because it's literally this little bit just here.
So before it got too dark, I took a little trip over to the island in my dinghy and a nice little look around and just saw the couple of buildings and the couple of bits that are on the island. It is a lovely island and it's got a really good anchorage this year I think there was something like 100 boats in the anchorage and there was still plenty of space for everyone. But this year, in actual fact, it was shut for the whole of July and you would face something crazy like a several €1,000 fine if you were caught on the island this year during the month of July because of all the nesting birds. But it was open again in August, so I had a nice little trip again then. Then it was time to head back to Pipey and put dinghies on board. And what I like to do when I'm out like this is just find a really nice film to watch. I can link it on my Bluetooth to my stereo system so it reverberates around the boat, and make that really cool, nice meal and, a nice cup of tea and just enjoy the last few moments of the evening.
Apparently someone lived on here for 33 years. Other than the soldiers that were here in the 1700s, 1800s. There's a lovely fort in the centre of the island over there. And as I say, it really is a beautiful little island. You're not allowed to look around too much of it because of it's a natural protection sort of site that's protected. But yeah, it's not a bad little anchorage here for the night.
So next day, not much wind at the start, but I thought I'd just quickly show this because I thought this was interesting. I dived down to my anchor and no, I hadn't applied reverse thrust when I dropped the anchor. And I finally got down to it, trying to hold my breath enough. And there it is, just sat on the seabed like that. So you really want a good sort of 1,000-1,500 revs in reverse and a sharp yank to get that dug in.
Yeah, it's another day. I left Ile Dumet this morning. I waited for the wind because there was hardly anything at first. A little bit of wiring. Spent ages faffing around with 360-degree cameras and trying to figure out how to download files, search on the internet for the answers, and drive yourself generally crazy. I don't like technology, and I work in a science and technology organisation, but never mind. That's probably why I don't like technology. It's just always the same, you know, this bit doesn't work, you've got to download the latest thing, turn it off and turn it on again. Oh, I don't know. And there is Ile Dumet receding into the distance. Not that much distance, I'm only about a mile out, I suppose. I'm proceeding downwind. I'm only doing about 2.5 knots, but it's only around about sort of 4.5 knots of wind, so I'm on almost a bit of a reach, I suppose. Oh, she's going quite nice. She's doing okay. Haven't really had the winds to find out how well she's going to go yet. Right, so as said, I'm not the world's best sailor, okay? It's not like I've been on a sailing course or anything like that. But anyhow, I was just looking at my sail and I was thinking, what on earth is up with my telltales, right? Alright, that one's flicking around a bit now. But that was pointing backwards. The inner one was pointing backwards, just like that one up there, right? And I was thinking, why is one pointing backwards and one pointing forwards? I thought, how's that possible? Like the top one's doing it too, right? Anyhow, it should be like that, you see, so they're both going there. So I'm thinking, I've got to trim the sail up. I tried trimming and I couldn't get it right. Then I found that where they've changed the bolt rope, they've got the telltale stuck underneath the bolt rope, the new bolt rope that goes up the edge of the sail. So essentially it was stuck pointing the wrong way. So I freed it with my boat hook, that one, because I can get to it, and now it's okay. Those two are still stuck under the new bolt rope. But so it's not always me messing things up, is it? Right, so that boat up there, he's got the edge on me. No doubt about that. What is he, about 32 footer? He was back here about there about 20 minutes ago or so. A couple of things to remember. He's probably paying attention to sailing and trimming his sails, whereas I'm not even steering. Come to think of it, the wind's gone off and I haven't even noticed. On top of that, I've just made my lunch in the last 20 minutes and a cup of tea, so I've literally just left the boat on autopilot. But yeah, he's got the edge on me. But the other thing to remember is I'm towing 2 stern drives through the water, and if I lift those up, we'd probably be about the same, or maybe might still have a little edge. But 2 stern drives with 14-inch props, 14 by 14 props, you can imagine that that's gonna create a fair amount of drag, isn't it? I would lift them up, but well, for one thing, I've had a problem with one of the gear cables and I can't be bothered to undo the bolt. And the second thing, I'm feeling quite lazy at the moment.
I did manage to get her out to sea again that August in a bit better conditions. It was quite a strong gusting wind and she performed really nicely. Unfortunately, I forgot to record it. But here's a bit of footage from this year where I was tinkering along quite happily in about, I don't know what the wind speed was, but it was a nice gentle breeze and she was doing 5.5 knots, and it was a really nice trip out to all of the islands in the bay to keep her on. Maybe that'll be for another video. But I am happy with the mast. It's given me the performance I was really looking for. So with that, really it was time to go and get the boat out the water and go home again.
Here I am. I was busy going home thinking, great, I've got my data, now let's go home. And I noticed that some kids have gone and let this boat off, look. And there's a lovely little black boat there and it keeps on swinging round to it, and it's touched it a few times now. And once we get a storm or something like that, it's going to smack round into it and damage it. So I'm going to do the good Samaritan thing. Anchor, jump in the water. I'm going to swim over, attach a rope onto the anchor chain there, and then try and pull it in and tie it up on the side. Oh, and it's a nice pontoon, and you know, it's supposed to be for everyone. And this thing's been tied up to it for a year now, blocking the pontoon. So I always anchor, and I always have to anchor because of this boat. But anyhow, I'm going to go and tie it up now, but presumably the kids will undo it again at some point. It's not what I can do though, but at least I can stop the damage today.